Well, thank you for everybody for showing up under these interesting and trying circumstances. The power has been on for several days now, and so I think I can get through this. What I wanted to focus on in this talk is change and how we approach our interactions with an ever-changing environment. This slideshow I'm putting up, fortunately, we had some discretionary funds in the Ogallala Aquifer program, a project funded by ARS. And we're able to get imagery in certain areas of the Ogallala and stitch it together to be able to look at land use around the Lubbock area from the mid-'80s up till present time. And this really got me thinking in terms of looking at these slides and asking some very simple questions that when land goes into agricultural production or goes from irrigation to dry land or goes back to natural or goes into urban, there's all these factors driving the change in land use, which is very impactful, not just on the physical environment and the agricultural economy, but also, all of the citizens within the region. And so I started to think about, well, what is driving these changes? And initially we were working on, well, when water becomes less available in the aquifer, that obviously means maybe, the land will go out of production. But then we started looking at the imagery and realized there's a whole lot more going on here than simply talking about water becoming more expensive. So these changes in land use have to be driven by technological innovation, which we've seen over the last half a century in the Ogallala, financial and economic conditions, money to invest, infrastructure. Without transportation, many of the products, agricultural products, could not be transported to their markets. And then additionally, changing physical and social values within the region. These factors continue to drive change in the region, and there'll probably be additional factors we begin to identify that are driving this change. And when we look at change, too often we think, well, we need to adapt to change, but there's a whole field of study referred to as change management. And oftentimes this is looked at in terms of institutional. We want to change the university. How do we go about doing that? But this happens on a much larger scale. And when we look at how do we manage change, there's actually a spectrum of how individuals and institutions manage change. And the spectrum goes from resist the change, no, we don't want to change. We're going to fight the change. In the middle is what we call incident response. And I would say the last year was, a great example of setting this up, how we've had to respond to the pandemic. And last week was a phenomenal response in Texas and how we had to respond and change our behavior in response to the major winter storm that came through. But on the far end of the spectrum is what's referred to as adaptive management. And in adaptive management, we don't simply try to resist change. We don't try to just respond to change. We talk about driving the change. That is, you use the change, realize it's coming, and then try to affect what is changing rather than just simply responding to what's happened. And when we look across the Ogallala region, we realize individuals and institutions and communities are using a wide range of these approaches. I think the vast majority, we're still working with what I call incident response, that is responding to changing conditions. Some are actually engaging in much more proactive adaptive management. But I will tell you, the narrative within the research community still falls back into incident response. And that is, if you think about the dominant conversation we have of why we're doing this research, both within the basin and external to the basin, it comes down to, well, the Ogallala is going to run out of water. What are we going to do then? That is, it's an incident we're responding to, not something we're just saying, the Ogallala has changed over the last 100 years. It's going to continue to change. How are we going to embrace that and decide what we want rather than just sort of responding to what's happening to us right now? And to be clear on this, most of the academic community I talk to would embrace moving to support an adaptive management approach across the entire basin. But there's two important factors that have to come into place to really be able to do that and have the academic community really engage in adaptive management. And the first is basically the summit and everything involved in the outreach and engagement parts of the Ogallala Coordinated Ag Project. And that is a productive and transparent dialogue with stakeholders, for the entire aquifer. And this needs to be continually nurtured and forwarded. That is, there can't be this intermittent, engagement, say, what is your problem? Okay, we're going to go solve it. Now we're back. Here's the solution. Move on to the next problem. There's really good examples of having this productive dialogue. The 2018 summit was a good example. Sharing the aquifer-wide survey results, highlighting the shared concern of water users on the strong desire to conserve groundwater, integrating emerging irrigation technology into the agricultural production, and expansion of the Texas Master Irrigator programs, along with many, many other engagement and outreach programs that we have. And the reason this is so important is that this helps develop a common understanding between stakeholders, extension, and research communities on the actual issues the region is facing. The second thing that needs to come into play to really move the academic community into being much more engaged in an adaptive management approach to dealing with changes in the basin is a rethinking the role that academia plays. Because I've read enough proposals, and I still get the proposals to the OAP program, I get the proposals to review from USDA, and every proposal starts off with the Ogallala is running out of water. We're gonna look at this and we're gonna find some information to help us solve this problem. That is, if we continue to try to solve the problem, we will never get out in front of it. We will just simply solve a problem, respond to the next problem. That is, we need to realize that the changes occurring in the Ogallala, whether they're changes due to declining groundwater levels or changes due to climate or changes due to population shifts or anything else, this is not a problem to be solved. This is a situation to be managed. And that is the heart of adaptive management, realizing and admitting that we will not solve a problem. We will just simply help manage the situation. And if we can move into that mindset, we realize that, hey, we're going to be in this for the long haul. We're going to continually be looking at managing a situation, but we're going to gear our programs to help people get out in front of these, I guess I'd say, situations, and then provide information and resources that help manage that and drive the change that people within the entire region would like to see. And so while this summit will have many goals and outcomes, one of the most important activities will be looking at how we forward this dialogue that identifies the critical information gaps and knowledge needs of the individual and communities to basically get everybody to think about, okay, we're managing the situation, not solving the problem. And that's our role in it. And so now it's time to get to work.